Hello, everybody. This is the Cells at Work episode 9 review. My name is Jeff, and with me, as always, is Coby and Torie.
Hello,
Say hello,
Coby and Torie.
Aha.
See, I was ahead of you that time for the joke.
Yeah, I know, but that means that the setup was not proper, and you just said hello, Coby and Torie voluntarily.
Ah, dang it! I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve here. I'm trying to find the next big thing in comedy.
The punchline before the setup.
Yeah, genius.
You know, actually, Dave Chappelle did that in I think his Netflix special. One of his Netflix specials. It's actually pretty good.
So he copied us.
Basically, you're Dave Chappelle, the next Dave Chappelle.
Awesome.
Dang.
Yeah, here we are. Cells at Work, episode 9. Shall we get into it?
Yeah,
I suppose.
we're here.
So, we begin with Killer T Cell ordering around a camp of naive T cells. Seems like they're at a boot camp, basically. And they're disturbing the nearby other T cells. Amongst them is helper T cell and the secretary T cell. I don't remember the name of that T cell. Do you remember her name, Coby?
Nope.
All right, secretary T cell it is. When suddenly a naive T cell is flung through the window, disturbing helper T cell's valuable T time. And so helper T cell and killer T cell get into an argument. And the naive T cells are like, well, I thought they were just a boss-subordinate relationship. And Dendritic Cell, always on hand with the picture books of past T cells, pops open a memory book and says, hey, these two used to be friends, sort of,
What?
back then. And then we enter the flashback.
I don't think
All
they're
right.
friends.
Yeah, they weren't friends. I said friends, sort of.
It's friends, sort of. To preface this, the thing I want to say, Dendrite is creepy as hell. Like, Dendrite is just, yeah. He's just like the way he always talked and like his mannerisms always at first thought to me like he was a bad guy. I remember in his first episode when he was like helping naive T cell like turn into a killer T cell. Like I thought he was like tricking him into become something bad. And I remember the show I was watching. So and then this episode he's like, hey guys, you guys wanna see something cool? And like he shows him like this picture book, and then when it flashes back and Dendrite's there in the flashbacks throughout the whole time, he's like taking pictures of kids from like behind trees. Like, come on, man, that's creepy.
Yeah, I agree. Taking pictures of kids behind trees is, in fact, creepy. But what if it was your job to take pictures of kids behind trees?
Yeah, I'm assuming that pedophilic laws do not are followed by cells, I guess?
Because there's no need, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Still, Dendrite gives off a weird vibe, in my opinion.
He's giving off the creepy vibes for you.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of like I see him as kind of like a camp counselor that's been there for a really, really long time.
He's like, oh, these wacky kids.
Yeah, and then
At
like
it
his kids grow up and then they end up working at the camp as well. So he's like, hey, I remember when these kids back then were like this kind of thing. I think he's alright.
Okay.
I think he's a convenient plot device.
He is just an information hub, isn't he? Like, that's like all and he helps T cells.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess, but isn't the things that he's supposed to be showing them supposed to be helping them? Not to be like, oh, look at this time when these two were punching each other.
It helps the native T cells have a better appreciation for their boss and shows that they too can become big and strong like them. So I think he did help them. Haha.
Yeah, I agree with Coby. I think I think there's always value in looking at the history of people that are above you, seeing that they're in the same place that you once were back in the day.
Yeah, I guess so. That is true.
Yeah, changed your opinion.
I know.
Boom. So the flashback.
Yes.
Can I also preface something? I think the animation in this episode was fairly weak. It was, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I thought it was kind of on a different level in terms of quality. Or is that just me?
I just felt there wasn't anything to really animate. Like there was nothing to really show off. There's no real big villains to fight, no big set pieces. There's just two of them talking and training, which is just a lot of static shots.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the same old animation, but they didn't have any cool shots to change your perspective.
Maybe. Okay, so into the flashback, we see that young killer T cell and young helper T cell, their roles are reversed. Helper T cell he's the kind of the big boy on the block. He's physically and mentally superior to killer T cell, who was once a wimpy boy.
Weak.
And basically the flashback continues throughout their years growing up. They go through a bunch of training courses, and the two kind of have a bit of a rivalry, although it's kind of one-sided. I think helper T cell is basically always on top in terms of skill level, but near the end, helper T cell kind of throws him a bone and decides to help him out, and basically they end up, I guess, as the cells that they are today, with the help of helper T.
But I wonder why he helped him at the end, when the whole time before he was like berating him, saying that he sucks and that he should just quit and he's never gonna make it.
Yeah, there was no moment where helper T cell changed his mind. Like there wasn't like a moment where like, man, maybe this kid does have something that makes him special. Like maybe I was wrong in my thinking. And I think it's just the constraints of a 22-minute, episode, that there wasn't anything. But it felt so. I just felt this episode so like by the numbers plot points. Like they hate each other. They're both training. Helper T helps him out at the end. Friendship. Like they just hit all those beats very quickly without any emotion behind it. I thought
I mean, there was no explicit line that helper T cell said out loud, like, well, maybe he is strong. But I think there were moments visually where you could tell that helper T cell could see something in killer T cell, and I think of two moments, I guess, specifically. The first moment is when he's out. So killer T or helper T wakes up in the middle of the night and goes out and decides to go training, and he's like, okay, I guess it flashes forward because he says like, all right, I think it's time to call it a night. But then he sees killer T cell also training, just as hard, if not harder than he is, kind of just pounding away, and he never really acknowledges like, oh, maybe he's actually really good, but like you can kind of see it, like they're like it lingers on his face a bit when he's watching him, and then after he sees him, he actually goes off and continues training on his own. So in a way, he was kind of inspired by him in his training in that moment. And then the other moment I can think of is there's a moment where the other naive cells at the time are kind of making fun of killer T cell, and they're like, this guy's really weak, right? And then the camera kind of pans over to helper T cell, and it kind of, again, it lingers, and he's just like watching him for a bit, and he's just like, yeah, right. And I think in those moments, it's sort of subtle, but I think those are the parts where, at the very least, helper T cell acknowledges that killer T cell is working as hard as he can. And then, of course, he gives him the little hint at the end during the
little hint. He tells him what one of these teachers should have told him in like the last like years. Hey, when you punch things, maybe keep your eyes open. Like you do this subconscious thing where you close your eyes. Like if he hasn't realized that after all this time of training, then he shouldn't have been there to begin with.
He should have been down the black hole like the rest of those people.
Yeah, to imminent death.
Yeah, so, what happens to killer T cells that don't survive or don't make the cut? Like, they say that there are cells that flunk out. Do they just execute them?
I think they're gone because I think it's something, because if they don't pass that, whatever it was called at the end, that like thing, the thing that only a few cells, I think the narrative said it's like only a few T cells can survive this.
Yeah.
Once they come to, so they're dead. They drop to an abyss of nothing.
That's true. But that's messed up. I thought like the test itself was so hard that they would either die or live through it. Instead, they're literally just murdering them because they suck.
Well, I mean, the human body needs strong killer T cells.
It seems like a ridiculously easy test too. It's like it's like an all test of, because throughout all their training things, it was punch bad cells, and then for the final test, it's like, oh, maybe there's some good cells here too. Like that's
They
it.
did. No,
And
they
that's
did
the-
that in the beginning too.
Yeah,
They,
so
they
there
did
was
the. It was basically the same test. The only difference was it was in a maze and it was smoky.
And it was smoky, and like some of them had like, oh, I thought this was a cell. Nope, it was. I thought this was a virus. Nope, it was a cell wearing a funny hat. Like, and then that's caused that guy to die.
And like the weakling killer T cell, he took like forever to kill that one, the one that made him pass, the antigen that everyone's like, go left, go right, go left, go right.
The one was just like,
If everyone else would have just taken their time and waited and then punched, they would have all passed.
I mean, the job does seem simple, but we are just talking about a single cell here. We are multi-celled organisms that are capable of thought and reason. These are just like little tiny little cells that have one simple job, and that means that their test has to be relatively simple. I mean, the addition of a maze and a smoke must be like the equivalent of us trying to do fucking brain surgery or something like that. It's just so many complex variables at once that they need to really focus,
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
Yeah,
and
anyways.
then they became friends.
Yeah, and yeah, they became friends, kind of. Killer T, they have that stereotypical scene by the river, anime scene by the river.
By the way, what's that river made of?
It looked like urine.
That's a good,
It was
Very
yellow.
well could be. Yeah, it was very yellow,
I
wasn't
thought
it?
it was reflecting from the sunset.
But there's no
which-
sun inside the human body. Come on.
Yeah, so and that was yellow. That water was yellow. So I don't know if it was like liver.
I thought it was plasma. That's
Could be
what I thought it
plasma.
was.
Yeah. So yeah, Killer T, young Killer T, was sort of on the verge of quitting, and then Helper T decides, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe you should quit. Kind of playing to his fiery personality, and that amps him up, and he's like, yeah, what did you say? And then he tries to punch him, and then Helper T punches him, and then Helper T gives him more encouraging words, and then yeah, basically Helper T is responsible for all of Killer T's success because he pushed him on. And I guess for me personally, it's appropriate because in the end, Helper T cell became a Helper T cell, not a Killer T cell. So he's like, his role is basically like a commander, right? He's the commander. He's supposed to strategize and basically tell the Killer T cells what to do. And he could have been a great Killer T cell, but he was better as an actual like leader. So he was kind of taking on a leadership role there. He knew how to help out Killer T cell and knew exactly what to tell him and stuff. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that you need in a leader, right? You need to know how to motivate your troops.
I guess so.
So yeah, and that's a flashback right there.
That's the flashback, and that's why because it's hard to talk about this because I didn't feel like a whole lot happened, and that's why I felt this episode fell flat for me. It fell flat on two levels. The first level was just on a basic level. I just didn't find it that interesting. I don't think it provided a huge ton of insight, or not even insight, or just intrigue into Killer T's backstory. And then also the second reason why it failed to me, which is my fault because I got my expectations up, was because I thought this was going to be directly related to Killer T's story arc that we saw last episode about him not thinking of cells as friends and why he's so hard and that whole arc that seemed to be a setup for this flashback episode. And my mind connected the two. So I was like, oh man, we're going to see something awesome. And then, but they were largely independent of that. This was just a separate story flashback, which I know that the answer to that, the problem with that is just, that's the show, right? There's, what should I be expecting from the show?
Yeah. And now that I think about it, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. It's just that it was my fault for thinking that because the show has proven time and time again, it's not that type of show. I just thought with the Killer T tag last episode about him being sad about not having friends and his whole speech, along with the next episode's a Killer T flashback. I thought we'd have more connective tissue between the two.
Connective tissue, nice.
Nice.
Now that you mention it, this episode kind of contradicted Killer T's speech at the end of last episode because he was all like, "I can't believe you want to be friends with these cells. What if we have to kill them one day? Yada yada yada." But in this cell, even though there is a rivalry between Killer T and Helper T, I mean, you can tell that they're not just... He doesn't just not care about Helper T. I mean, why would he? Like, or why wouldn't he care about Helper T? Helper T is the reason he decided to grow up and become a strong killer T cell. So I feel like he does have a strong relationship with these cells. So what he said at the end of last episode doesn't really make that much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess maybe the difference is that Commander Helper T cell may not I don't know if those go rogue and end up being bad cells. So maybe he's not talking about them. Just like when he was talking to Neutrophil in the previous episode, he was talking about all the normie cells.
The normie cells.
Not the actual like
cool killer T cells.
Yeah, immune system cells, which they all are. So that could be it. But yeah, I mean, at least he has they're not friends anymore, but at least he had a friend, you know?
He had a friend.
Yeah.
I don't know why you want to be friends with these cells. Because again, this episode proved that all cells are dicks. Like all the T cells were also just like, oh, look at this guy, he's so weak, he should drop out. I was like, man, you're all going through the same stuff. Cut him a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all the cells inside of human bodies. We're all just dicks.
We're all just dicks, and we're made
up of dick cells. Yeah. So there was another flashback episode in the series, if you guys remember, that involved red blood cell and neutrophil. So which one do you guys like better? Do you guys like this flashback better or the last flashback?
I can't even remember what happened in the other flashback.
The other one was like the kind of the backstory between red blood cell and white blood cell's first meeting, and I would take that flashback over this flashback any day of the week.
Yeah, I think the difference is because the flashback focused on killer T cell, which we previously had a relationship with, so that was some good insight, I guess. But the other main character was Helper T cell, and we didn't really get much insight into him before this episode, and so we didn't really care about him and his relationship with Commander T cell.
Yeah, it was weird that's the relationship they chose to focus on. Again, I'm thinking of it like a serialized show. It's like, oh, how come Helper T cell wasn't in this before? But because it would have been better if it was a different cell. If it was like, oh, him and white blood cells first meeting, like that would have been awesome. But that's not how this body works, because that's not how these cells work.
Mm-hmm. Not how the show works either. Although, I will say, okay, so, yes, this flashback was kind of weak because I personally don't really care about these characters that much. But at least it succeeds in the sense that, whereas before in the other flashback, the characters were basically the same as they were back then as they are now, in this flashback, there was at least like a difference in who they were back then versus who they are today. Because remember, in the other flashback, red blood cell was still getting lost, and neutrophil was still very excited to gank things. In this one, it's at least kind of surprising. It's like, oh, killer T cell used to be a scrub, which kind of harkens back to the other naive T cell from, I think, the third episode or something like that, where it was like a little naive boy and he became like a big strong man. It kind of harkens back to that. And also Helper T cell, he's kind of a scrawny desk worker type, but back then he could have been the best killer T cell ever. So I thought that was interesting.
His name is Helper T. He's not Command T? He's not Command.
So he is the commander, though. The commander's station or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, but he's just Helper T.
He is a Helper T, but he's one of the commander cells and tells him, hey, go gank this or whatever.
Who was the cell that did nothing? That one female cell. The one that was
secretary cell.
Yeah, secretary cell. The one who seemed to prime for actual importance. She's like, oh, she keeps T cells from falling apart. I'm like, oh, that's going to be cool. She's going to be responsible for helping them. But she did nothing throughout this episode.
She literally did nothing. Yeah.
I don't know why they're introducing her. She's probably going to be a frequent character, but yeah. Other than that,
she'll be more reoccurring, I guess.
She did nothing.
Is she wait? She's the one. You know what?
She's the one that's been next to Helper T.
Yeah, the one who said, Commander T, you have cookies on your face, so she was helping him out.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes more sense now that we're talking about it. But she didn't do anything in the episode.
Yeah, she was a minor character before, and in this episode, they treated her almost as if she was going to be more of a main character. But even back in the past, she was basically just dendritic cell in the same way. These two have always been the same. Just looking up for the distance.
Oh, I remember this. Oh, as an audience, I remember too.
Yeah, she was pointless. She could have You could have either just cut her part out completely or just edited her part down to just being like an appearance, like, oh, she's here as well. All right.
My thing is that even though the relationship between Helper T and Killer T ended up switching at the end, this plotline was pretty much the same as the other plotline we had with the Killer T cells and the naive cell. Dead cell even was there and flashback with just one scene in his picture book. Oh, look, these cell will be weak as well. So I don't see the point of this flashback since it already was dealt with in the previous episode.
Yeah. The idea of a weak T cell becoming a big, strong killer T cell has been explored already for sure. So, yeah, I don't know.
That's
I
just
guess
sad. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this episode besides it's just like I didn't really like it very much.
Yeah, me neither. I give it a 0.
With 0?
I give it a 0.1.
0.1. Is it your least favorite episode?
Yeah.
Wait, I thought you were giving it some praise about the backstory.
Yeah.
But it still didn't do anything to you.
I guess that earned it a 0.1.
Well, like I said, I am giving it praise, but that doesn't mean I liked it. I'm just saying I'm trying to be consistent because last flashback episode, I said I wish there was a little bit of growth or difference between who these characters were and who they are now. And in this episode, they actually gave that. I think the main problem, though, is I don't really care about these characters, and we've kind of seen the storyline before. And also, there weren't really any, like, usually in these episodes, there's, like, some kind of cute moment or funny moment, but this episode didn't deliver any of that. I don't really think there was anything that made me laugh or any, like, cute platelets going around.
The only thing that made me laugh was when after Killer T-Cell, like, won his test, like, and after he broke his board with his head, and then, like, everyone was clapping. There was, like, a shot of Killer T-Cell. And then, like, the cell that was, like, in costume, like, who held the board to begin with, was just doing this, like, little half-hearted little clap in his suit. And I just thought that was a funny little visual. And I was like, oh, that's cute. But that was it.
I don't even remember seeing that.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, no cuteness. Which is what makes the show, right? It being cute.
Yeah, the show, I think, is meant to make you laugh and make you go, ah.
There was a lot of text in this too. A lot of text.
Yeah, I didn't read any of it. I didn't even try.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't really. I just wasn't into it. I'm excited for next week's episode, which is like another germ that comes and like attacks.
But actually, Coby, we've seen this germ already.
Oh, is it
Staphylococcus aureus or something?
Aurelius. Yeah.
Was it the first one?
It was in the second episode.
Yeah, we double checked it.
Yeah, in the description for the second episode on Crunchyroll, you could see the name Staphylococcus something something, and it's the same name as the episode for next week's.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm kind of cautiously optimistic to see how they handle the same sickness again.
I have low expectations for this one.
Yeah, I got to go into it as I guess not super excited, but I'm kind of excited.
You can't help it, Coby.
I'm just excited. I'm an excitable person.
It's funny because when we looked up this anime, we referenced the manga, and the manga had this episode as one of their chapters, the Staphylococcus aureus, and we were like, oh, looks like they moved that to episode 2. They kind of already did that. But it looks like they're going to continue to do the same episode that they did in the manga, and I don't know where the other one came from, so...
Guess we'll have to see.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess we'll see. Well, that was a fun thing about between three people who like didn't care for that episode at all.
Very meh.
Yeah.
Very very meh.
I'm on the not so great about this show anymore train.
You're back on that train.
I'm back on it.
Your foot is more in the out box than the in box at this time.
I'm giving my ticket to the train master. He's looking at me like, "Are you sure you want to go this way?"
Master.
The train master.
That's what they're called.
As obviously I don't drive trains.
You don't drive trains?
I don't drive trains.
Everyone drives trains.
Yeah, I drove a train yesterday.
What the heck?
I drove a train on the way here.
Yeah.
Huh?
Come on, give it the times.
Dang it! I just ride a car. I'm lame.
Yeah, that's so current year. We're back in the 20s.
All right, Torie, where can they find us?
You can find us Nerd Blaze on YouTube, iTunes, I don't know, Libsyn, wherever you can find things to listen to, podcasts. If you want to listen to Anime Ricochet, where we talk about sports animes, you could check that out as well on YouTube, probably. Like, subscribe, comment, talk to us, please. And yeah, that's about it.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Well, see you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.